Hello there, lollygaggers. Got another week on tap here. We are Lollygagging Sports. I'm Bo Reed along with Samantha Bunton and Matthew Irby. Little Green Day getting us started this week. Before we get into it, we'll talk some NFL. We got the ALCS, the NLCS. We're going to talk some playoff baseball and a little bit of football. But first, Samantha, how you doing?
I am okay.
That's all you got for me?
I'm sorry. That's all I got. I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous. It's baseball playoffs. There's somebody I need to get rid of. Nervous.
Irby, how about you? I assume you're about the same condition I am at this point.
Yeah, doing okay. It's early in the game, but yeah, no, doing fine. You know, I try to. What is it we've been doing the last few months on here? We choose joy, right? For the past year, we try to choose joy, and much rather be sitting here up 2-0 instead of down 2-0. So, yeah, take that positive. But, hey, business ain't done. Got to knock out the defending champs.
Just a friendly reminder to those of you new to lollygagging. We record the show on Wednesday nights, so we are recording this as Game 3 of the ALCS has commenced. So keep that in mind, and then I'll probably remind you when we talk about the ALCS later in the show. But let's get football going first. Samantha, let's start. I start with a couple of surprise losses. Now, going in, both the 49ers looked absolutely unbeatable. I mean, they just had the special sauce, right? Like, they just looked like a team that wasn't going to get beaten, at least not anytime soon. Philly kind of had some wobbles here and there, but you still figured they were going to take care of the Jets without much issue, but here we are a couple of days after, and both the 49ers and the Eagles took a loss. Which one was more surprising, do you think?
Well, I'll start by saying that they will both be fine. I don't think anyone needs to be panicking here. Both of these teams are going to be just fine.
Oh, sure.
I guess I was probably more surprised by the Philly loss, despite the fact that they have looked a bit more vulnerable than the 49ers for a couple of reasons. One of which is that it's the Jets. I mean, I know you can make that argument about the Browns as well, but there's sort of an important statistic in there that Kyle Shanahan is something like 1-9 against Jim Schwartz defenses lifetime. So I think that's something to take into consideration there, where it's not really about the 49ers being in trouble. It's not about the Browns being a better team than the 49ers. It's that this particular rock, paper, scissors, right? Like, this particular item beats this particular item. So I think it's probably more about that. I do think there's a piece in here, and RB, I want to know what you think about this too, about, okay, well, what do you do without Christian McCaffrey? That's a problem that probably needs to be solved. But the Eagles, again, I'm not worried about them, and maybe we need to give a little bit of credit to the Jets for being perhaps better than we thought that they would be. I think Philly's looked a little bit sloppy, and you said wobbly, which I think is a good word for it, but they'll be fine. But I was more surprised by that, because these are both much weaker teams beating a much better team than they are, and this one didn't have a critical change in personnel immediately before the game, nor did it have a sort of matchup issue like the other game did, where you can say, okay, well, there are some extenuating circumstances about this particular matchup that isn't really about who's better overall, but about how these two particular teams come together and what happens.
Irby, same question for you. Which one surprised you more, the 49ers loss or the Eagles loss?
Well, I'm the exact same. The Eagles loss, it surprised me more than the Niners loss. But again, same as Samantha, neither team any panic. I'm a big fan of good losses. Everybody needs them. Everybody, as long as you're learning from them, stuff like that. And and San Francisco, I'll do that one first. Trent Williams said it well after the game. Said we did not deserve to win that game the way we played, and it's true. Cleveland was beaten the entire second half. Cleveland's beating you to the line of scrimmage. So, there's so many other little things that we can break down, but it really does come down to that, like stuff like that. And this is a great example of defense. It is about defense. It is all about defense. And here you go. You got two examples of a Browns team, a Jets team that knows how to play defense, has defensive-minded coaching. And what do? They get the job done. They put the offense in a position to win football games. And Bo did it with quarterbacks that nobody here trusts. like it's just this is a great example of football. Defense puts you in a position to win football games, and your offense, as long as it doesn't screw it up, can do it and win it. And so, not worried. Like I said, like you're saying, not worried. I mean, Philly, hey, you had Julio Jones, you're gonna be fine. Yeah, totally. That's what the missing piece was. Good losses all around. San Francisco, the one that want to learn from. So you're kind of touched on, like, what do you do, without Christian McCaffrey? And I mean, it sounds like he's likely going to play Monday, but even if he does or doesn't, it's real simple. You give the ball to somebody else. Like Kyle Shanahan and the Niners have made a living of that for the last 4 years of next man up running. And you've got Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason there who are not bad running backs. Give them chances. Give them touches. Like, this is the problem with McCaffrey in Carolina, is he was touching the ball 1 million times a game. Okay, I mean, but legitimate, he's touching it 40 times a game. Mm-hmm. He can't do that. No human can do that. You could do that in high school, sure, but in the NFL, you can't do it. Stop giving him that many touches. Christian McCaffrey is an amazing weapon when you don't limit his touches, but when you do limit his touches, he will get the big bang plays. And so San Francisco, if anything to learn from there, guys, you've got 2 other capable running backs. Give them the ball.
Yeah, and I'm glad both of you came out and said there's nothing to worry about. Like, I actually haven't seen anybody worried about these two. I was just curious which one you thought was the most surprising. I mean, they were both shocking. They were both really surprising losses for me. Hey, sometimes you got to tip your helmet to the other team coming up with a big win. Let's flip it over to a couple of other surprises. Dolphins and Lions. Now, we've talked about both these teams, talked about the Lions last week, but I want to take a different spin here because right now, with those losses by the Eagles and the 49ers, they've got the same record as the Dolphins and the Lions. Now, the Dolphins and Lions are sitting tied for the best record in the NFL, and obviously within each of their conferences. So, Samantha, let's start with the Dolphins here. How do they stack up with the other contenders in the AFC? Talk about the Chiefs, probably at the top of that list. The Bills, where they've already got that one loss to the Bills. How do they stack up, you think, after watching them for 6 weeks?
I mean, I think it's too soon to tell. I mean, they lost to the Bills, which I think that's something. That's certainly something to note. But other than that, they have not been challenged in the same way that some other teams have been challenged that have come out of it about as well. I'm going to probably say the same thing about Detroit here. I think they've been challenged a bit more than Miami. And this is not to say that Miami is not as good as they appear. It's more that, like, we can't prove it. So I like what this team can do. I'm a little bit worried about what will happen to them defensively when they run into another Buffalo. Somebody else like it. You're going to play Buffalo again. You may see them a third time in the postseason. And you're going to come up against other teams that can score at will. And that's kind of where I run into an issue with Miami right now. As far as I'm concerned, their offense is set. Defensively, I have some worries because you're not going to put 70 points up against Kansas City or Buffalo or any of the other leading contenders. So, and obviously you didn't need that 70, but it's I suppose we're being a bit hyperbolic when we use that, but because it was a real score, my point is you're not going to be able to boat race everybody. And that's where I have a few questions about Miami.
I find it hard to believe that anyone could put 70 on anyone except for Denver.
I know. We're not going to see that again.
No,
probably good.
Irby, how about you? How do you think the Dolphins stack up?
Similar thought here. I mean, Miami, the offense is set. We know what they're going to do. We know they can put points on the board. It's when they get bottled up a little bit. How do they recover when they've got a hard-nosed team, a defensive-minded team, and they've seen that already, and that's a good thing. You've seen that. You've been stifled by it. So go back and learn from it. And that's where, Miami, it's fine. Like, I don't know. I'm not concerned about what Miami is and whether, then there's that thing of, like, what are you going to do against these really good defenses? And that is something that you're going to work through the season. Because this is not – it's weird because I look at it and It's not. I need to preface that it is not the same thing. But this kind of feels like some of these Packers teams, where it's like, oh, they can score, but they can't stop anyone. Miami has shown they can make a stop when necessary. It's not the same, but it's worth having like mentioning here of like this is a similar thing where you've got to be able to play the low scoring game. You've got to be able to make the defensive stops. I trust that Miami team. Like you're in a good position. The great thing for them is that they're in a division that is going to force them to play difficult games. Unfortunately for Detroit, and we talked about this last week, like are they go to the NFC North good? They're definitely NFC North good. I said last week, I think they win that division. I'm sticking with it. The record is moving that direction. This is definitely the winning team in that division. What they can do after that, like we won't find out because of the division and the record or the teams that laid in front of them. But I like this Lions team, but yeah, it's how well they're going to be tested out the season will be a different story.
How about you, Samantha? Where are you at with the Lions?
I think they look like a more well-balanced team than we were expecting. A little bit concerned about the injury to Montgomery and what that's going to mean going forward. But look, I mean, they've sort of been challenged, but I think that again, as Irby pointed out, and as we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, that it's really hard to know who somebody is when they play in a division that is not going to challenge them, and that is pretty much what the NFC North is and has been for quite a long time. And we saw it with Green Bay. That's why we saw those outstanding regular season records and then the early flameouts in the postseason. We have no idea if that's exactly what's going to happen to Detroit. It may very well be. So I'm paying a lot of attention to the out-of-division games against tougher opponents here because that's how I think we're going to get our answer. Week one is like, I want to give them credit. I'm not going to be one of those people that says, oh, well, Kelsey wasn't there, so it doesn't count that they beat the Chiefs in week one. No, it absolutely counts. But I will also be the first person to say week one is kind of a crapshoot, which is not to suggest that, if you play it 10 times, Kansas City would win the other 9, John Smoltz. But I need to see it again. I'm going to use your line, Bo. I need to see it again.
Yes. By the way, that's the worst cliche in sports. Well, you say play them 9 out of 10, or you'll win 9 out of 10. You play them 10 times. Well, okay. Well, that doesn't change what happened today.
Yeah, as those of you who know me know that I really, really hate hypotheticals. Like, there's just nothing worse than being asked, like, well, if it had gone completely differently than it did, what would you have done? And you're like, but it didn't. Like, right. I don't want to go through every possible, because technically you could say that about any series that exists, right? Play it X number of times. Well, how'd you arrive at the number 10? How'd you get there? How you guarantee, what's your logic behind they would win the other 9?
Right.
Like, it's like an absurd thing to say. Like, there are so many other ways you can express the idea that, like, the other team had a bad series and perhaps should have been more competitive without, like, completely devaluing the victory for the person who won by being like, well, if you played this over and over and over again, by some sort of, like, galaxy brain math, the other team would win 9. Like, explain to me how you arrived at that number and that conclusion and how you could possibly know that. Like, no. It just makes me insane.
Yeah.
Don't do this. Don't be that guy. Don't be John Smoltz. Don't be John Smoltz for so many reasons, but that would be on the list. Oh, boy.
All right, Irby, anything you want to add here?
Great, amazing pitcher. Terrible analyst. It's really just that. Like, yes, let's not play the what if game. I will gladly play that with you, and you will get sick and tired of playing the what if game because I play that all day long. But let's not do yes, I love that one of like, well, what if the other team scored more? Well, then they would have won. Like, that's that simple. Like, that's the beauty of sport. That's the beauty of what we watch here is we sit here and it's like, yeah, this and this, and we can sit here and tell you, here's how we think it should play out. It ain't going to play out that way necessarily. Like, you have to go and execute. That's the beauty of sport, is that you actually have to go out and get the job done no matter what. And that's what we love about professional as well, is that tip of the sword is so close that that's what happens when you do not perform and you do not execute. You get weeks in which the Browns upset the Niners, the Jets upset the Eagles, and it is fun to watch. It is a little bit shocking, but it's also, no, these are all professional athletes, and this is not that crazy when it happens.
All right. So let's have a little fun here because I noticed something watching game one of the NLCS, which again, we're going to get to that here in a second. But you happen to notice that the Kelsey brothers were there. They're hanging out in the suite, having fun, watching some playoff baseball. And it occurred to me that this is so baseball. The NFL, Samantha, they get Taylor Swift. Baseball gets the Kelsey brothers. Not sure what I'm going to make out of that, but I feel like that is such a disparity that actually fits NFL versus baseball.
Yeah, it's a bummer, right? Like, look, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that my concern here is that we as a nation are in danger of being badly overexposed to Travis Kelce. Like, I feel like there's way too much Travis Kelce in my life. Like, he's just not that interesting. Like, hey, he's dating Taylor Swift. That's cool. Happy for him. Seems like a good guy. Good football player. Like, I don't need to see his reality show. I don't need to hear his podcast with his brother. Like, I don't really need to see his mother all the time. Like, it's fine. They all have moms. It's okay. Like, I just, like, I'm not that entertained by all of this. And, like, there's just too much Travis Kelce in the world. And now it's infiltrating baseball, which is the only thing I could think about there. Like, oh, of course you're here. Of course you're here. I'm trying to watch a baseball game. And, of course, you're here. And so now you're going to take over the narrative. And you didn't even bring Taylor Swift with you. Like, the least you could have done is brought Taylor Swift along. You could do that for baseball. You could do it for the Swifties. You could do it for me, a Taylor Swift fan. Instead, you just showed up, you and your brother. Like, we haven't seen enough of the two of you. Like, okay, guys, he's just not that interesting of a person. He's really not. The most interesting thing about him is Taylor Swift, and she wasn't there.
Isn't it also possible, though, that he needs a break from Taylor Swift in public? Just throw it out.
Why doesn't he need a break from being in front of a camera or a microphone every second of his life?
Okay, well, that's fair. That's I'll give you that. Irby, how about you? What are you thinking here about the Kelsey brothers without, no Taylor Swift, but we get the Kelsey brothers for baseball's playoffs?
Well, I think that right there that's baseball right there. That's Manfred. Like, Manfred completely misread this situation. He thought Kelce was the piece that the NFL, everyone was talking about. Like, no, it was Taylor. Like, you give Taylor Swift the invite +1. You don't give Travis Kelce the invite +1 because then he brings his brother. And that's not what we want. But, yes, that is.
Yeah, there it is. That's it. You're right. That's exactly what it is.
Hey, that's Manfred. Like, no, it wasn't Travis. It was actually Taylor, but whatever. Yes, and then golly, you guys were saying it there, and it hit me like a hammer of how this ends. This does end with Donna Kelce getting her own reality TV show, and that scares me. But I mark it right now. I will take all the credit in the world. That will happen.
I don't know. We've had so much of this watching NFL games because Taylor Swift's at the game, and. Sure, the TBS crew finds Kelsey and Kelsey together. It was just a striking contrast from everything that we've been seeing between Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce at NFL games, and now we got the Kelsey brothers and no Taylor Swift at baseball's play. I mean, they realize that baseball's playoffs are more important than an early regular season game in the NFL, right, Samantha? They understand this?
No, of course they don't, and that's the whole problem, because it's like, this is not like Travis Kelce, known Philly fan. No, he's from Cleveland. Like, known Philly fan. Like, showing up to a baseball game on a date with his girlfriend. Like, no, this is the NFL being like, hey, you know how we could market ourselves? Like, let's go over and, like, get our tentacles into the baseball game. Like, you aren't getting enough attention. Like, I'm sorry, but a postseason baseball game is always going to be more important than, week 6 of the NFL. Like, this is always true. Like, playoffs are more important than regular season. I know the NFL would like to think that it can just take over everything that it touches, and it's done a pretty good job of doing that, to be fair. It's like one of those molds, those things that just spread. Once it gets in your house, you can't stop it, and it just keeps spreading and spreading and spreading, and that's the NFL. But, like, I don't know. My entire take on this whole thing was just, like, this giant eye roll. It's not like Kelsey and Taylor thought it'd be fun to go to a baseball game for a date. It's like, no, the NFL marketing machine is sending out its tentacles. Like, get out of my baseball game. That's how I feel about this. Get out of my baseball game.
Just get out of my game. Just leave. Don't turn around and come back. All right. Irby, anything you want to add here before we get into those baseball playoffs?
No, I'm good. Just Fernando Alonso's still down in Austin, Taylor. Just give me the heads up. Fernando's down in Austin this week.
All right. Let's start with that National League Championship Series that we just kind of talked about for a second. We won't talk about the Kelsey brothers anymore, Samantha. We'll talk about what's happening on the field between the Phillies and the Diamondbacks, because so far it's obviously been all Phillies, and everyone wants to talk about the crowd, and that's valid. It's fair. That's a very, very loud, raucous crowd. But I think the story so far is the Diamondbacks have suddenly forgotten how to pitch. And it started very early in game one, quite literally the first batter of the game. And it has not stopped. They are still making bad pitches here.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's like, I see how you make the mistake right out of the gate, because you've just gone up against a really lethargic looking Dodgers team. And so I think it's probably a bit shocking to come up against somebody who is like super, super aggressive right out of the gate at the plate. So, okay. But, like, we've played 18 innings of this now. Why have you not adjusted? Like, they are really, really struggling to deal with. I mean, you see people tweeting, like, half jokingly, like, you should probably never pitch to Bryce Harper again. And it's like, I mean, the sentiment of that is not entirely wrong. Like, stop. The number of home runs that have already been hit in this series, like, what? Stop giving them pitches they can hit. I mean, it sounds so stupid, like score more points than the other team, but like that's your whole job, like as a pitcher. Like it's an oversimplification, but like you are giving them way too much to hit. Like everything is coming on the long ball. Now the second game was a little bit different. We saw a lot more guys moving runners, but I think that if I'm going up against a team like that, I think I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make you beat me. If I walk you and I put runners on and I get beat later, I accept that. But you got to make them beat you, right? Stop giving them pitches they can take out of the yard every single time. Why are you pitching that way to Harper? Why are you pitching that way to Schwarber? Why do you ever pitch that way to Castellanos? I mean, heck, Trey Turner. Like, that's the problem. We got half the lineup on the list now. Like, strategically speaking, like, I'm not sure what Lovullo is doing here with his pitchers, and I would like to have some words with the Diamondbacks pitching coach about this as well. But, like, you've had some time to adjust your strategy now. Why haven't we seen it?
Yeah, and the way they're going to break that bell that they keep ringing every homer. They're going to break that thing. I keep waiting for one of them to actually hit the bell with their home run.
What happens if you hit the bell? Like, I mean, is there a sound effect? Like, what is the acoustic response to that?
I mean,
there's an electrical fire and explosions and stuff if you hit that.
Cool, let's do it.
I mean, I would think that they would have something lined up in case the bell gets hit.
Yeah, it's because it's far from impossible. So why?
Especially where the Phillies are hitting this series. My goodness.
Yeah.
These games have looked like batting practice.
Yeah.
Right? Like they've looked like batting practice. Irby, here. What are you thinking here? What's going on with the Diamondbacks pitching?
Well, we're going to find out here pretty soon, because this is I'll use the boxing reference because we're talking about Philadelphia here. I mean, this is quite literally the Phillies came out, and it's one of those matches where you're like, okay, both teams are going to kind of see what each other's going to do. They came out and bam, bam, put you on the mat. And what are you going to do about it? And the response in game two wasn't much better. It was the exact same approach, and it was the exact same approach from Philadelphia. Like it's what's interesting about watching what they're doing and the timing of how this is working out. we see this with all, like, you can look at all four teams. Like right now, you don't need to be pitching to Corbin Carroll. You don't need to be pitching to Yordan Alvarez. You don't need to be pitching to Corey Seager. Guys, like, everybody has those players. And the unfortunate thing you're saying, like, you're saying, well, you don't need to be pitching to Bryce Harper right now, and you're right. But you also don't need to be pitching to Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner and Nick Castellanos. Like, there's just so much what they're doing right now.
Right.
And it's you got to a rookie on the mound here in Game 3 and a bullpen game in Game 4 that you have to win at least one of them, and that maybe that's just the goal, is find a way to get one, and then you got to put it on your aces in Game 5 and 6 to get the job done. I mean that's a different approach. You've got to do something different. Philadelphia is not going to change what they're doing. We're seeing the aggression, okay, and use that aggression against them, because right now you're wanting to, and I get it. It worked well to get you to the postseason of starting batters off behind in the count. Was not working against the Phillies, so you got to change it up, and you got to change it up now, because Arizona is a good team. This is a good baseball team, but this is very, very close to being a sweep right now. And you can right the ship. There's still plenty of time. I mean, down 2-0, losing 2 road games isn't the craziest thing in the world, but man, you got to turn around. You got to turn it around. Yeah. like not even in Game 3. You got to do it in the first, second inning of Game 3. It has to happen now.
Yeah, I've only seen one team come back after getting absolutely demolished like that and come back and win a series. That was those 04 Red Sox, and they got demolished in Game 3 by the Yankees, and they came back and won 4 straight. I don't see this Diamondbacks team doing that, Samantha. Like this series for me, it's not like the other one we're going to talk about in a second. It's a different 2-0 feel when you're looking at Phillies and Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks just look completely overmatched by the Phillies right now.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because we always talk about the 04 Red Sox team, which is absolutely the most pronounced example of it that we've seen. But we've seen other teams come back from being down 3-1. So since then, so it's not impossible. 3-0 is a bit different. The numbers shift and sort of from game to game, and I believe the odds are actually worse on 3-0 than they were on 3-1. But because that's assuming it was 2-1 and then 3. Which sort of betrays a bit of a different narrative path through the series. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, we've seen teams come back from being down 3-1. The Red Sox, I believe, were down 3-0. Is that right? But the 16 Cubs did it too, but they were down 3-1 and it took them 7 games. So it's not impossible. Absolutely not. And they are, of course, as of this recording and as of when you guys hear this, only down 2-0. So it's okay. But the problem is, as I think you were kind of hinting at, is that the Diamondbacks don't look right now like they have any idea how to do that. And I suppose in their defense, if you think back to that 04 Red Sox series, if we want to, why not? Let's just roll with that, since it is sort of the most glaring example of it. At this point in that series, when this series was at 2-0 New York, the Red Sox also did not look like they had a prayer. So... It's not impossible.
No.
But at what point, do you stop and consider that, okay, we can cite this handful of examples where somebody turned it around. We also have, about 100 examples of people who were in that situation. Yeah. So the odds are not good. And we're going to need to see something different. And the longer you wait to turn it on, the more your odds drop.
Yeah. Real quick, just point of clarification. It's not the coming back from 2 or 3-0. It's what the last loss was such an overwhelming loss. Right.
Okay. Yeah. You're just talking about getting clobbered.
Okay. Just getting clobbered. Okay. Right.
So
and then then the Red Sox get the walk off from Poppy in games 4, 5, and 6, or 4 and 5. Right. You get the bloody sock in 6, Pedro in 7. Right. Like that was a different series. Right. I look at this. I see no life whatsoever in Arizona, and a Phillies team that is just absolutely abusing 70% of the pitches they see.
Well, the good news is you have a day off and you're at home, so there's never a time to right the ship. Like it's not. You don't have to play all the games in Philly because yes, Arizona again. This is a very good baseball team. A team that has worked hard to get where they are, and they got there, and they deserve there. But the way they played the last couple days, they don't look like a team that belongs in the postseason. And that's with your two best pitchers on the mound. That's what just is so scary about it is that it's your aces, it's your best guys, and nothing, absolutely nothing. And yeah, I mean, last night it was just, or sorry, I should say, Tuesday night game 2, it was just it was over. I mean, they after the couple innings in, and it's 3-0, then 4-0. It's like it's over. Like this game's over. They knew it too. It was just a matter if we have to play this out. But Arizona, like you said, it showed no fight whatsoever. So hey, flight, rest, relax. You're back home, and you can get back in this thing because there is a reason this Philadelphia team wasn't a 100-win team or 110-win because they're playing like a 110-win team right now.
Yeah.
But they're not. They are beatable. These guys can cool off. Okay? The pitching is hittable. Their bullpen is hittable. Okay? You can muscle back into this game. Down 2-0 is not the end of the world. Yes, they put you in a bad spot. You're in the corner. But down 2-0 is not 3-0. So it's, and the urgency is there. And that's the downside of when you're down 2-0 is you got to earn it now, and you got to win 4 out of 5. But it is possible. Absolutely.
Yep. Well, one little side note to this, Samantha, we all know what's going on with the Dodgers the last couple of years. How bad do they feel right now? Like they got absolutely swept by a Diamondbacks team that has looked downright lethargic in the league championship series. How does that make the Dodgers feel at this point? I know I wouldn't feel good.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is like, go back to 2004 again. You can do the same thing with that one as well. Yeah, it's
True.
rough. We talk about being the hot team in the playoffs, and it's like, okay, but what happens when you're the hot team and you run into an even hotter team, and then all of a sudden you look like the people you just beat up on? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know. It's some combination of Arizona cooling off and the Phillies just being like that guy right now. Think about if you're St. Louis coming in to face Boston in the World Series in 2004, it didn't really matter what you did before that. Like the doom scale is so bad on that. Right. So you can reverse it the other way too and say like, okay, like we all know sports doesn't work this way. You want to play that game of like, oh, well, if Arizona beat the Dodgers and then Philly beats Arizona, then how incredibly bad are the Dodgers if they're worse than this guy and this guy? And it's like, well, we all know it doesn't really work like that. But I think it's sort of like, yeah, I mean, if you're a Dodger fan, there's a little bit of extra bitterness, right? I mean, I know this happened to my Guardians last year where like you get put out by a New York team when you're fighting like crazy to stay in, and then you watch that team lay down and die against the trash cans, and you're like, you got to be kidding me. Right. I mean, there's some added animosity there where you feel like we would have at least tried. Like, I can't believe you're letting these guys get into the World Series, but like, replace Houston with another team, pretend it was Boston or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like, the point is you're just like, geez, man, like you spend all of your energy beating the crap out of me, and then you go and you lay down and you just lay an egg against your next opponent. It's just it's got to be so frustrating.
It's funny is like I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I feel like I've been fortunate in this area, but anytime I've had a team that's really good, and all season long from opening, be it football, be it hockey, basketball, baseball, whatever, really good start to finish, and they have the early exit that you're not expecting. I've at least had pretty good success with a team eliminating my team, going on and winning the championship, which makes you feel a little bit better, right? Because you lost to the championship team. I don't know what it's like, really.
Okay, let me say something that's a little mean, but also true.
Oh, go ahead.
I think that has more to do with the fact that your team, if we're putting it up against the Guardians, since that was the illusion here, that the Guardians have made a lot more postseason appearances in the Rangers have. So,
I was also referring to those 2007 Cowboys who lost to a Giants team that beat the perfect Patriots. So
I don't have a football team, so I can't go in on this. But yeah, I mean, well, no, the Cowboys have had a rough go. Remember the Jessica Simpson years? That was a rough That was a rough
Okay.
time.
I thought we agreed to never bring up Jessica Simpson again.
I never agreed to that.
Oh, who did I agree?
I will never. I will never ever agree to that because I will not stop talking about when that coyote ate her dog.
I thought I had an agreement with someone. I guess it wasn't you.
It wasn't me. I don't promise not to bring up Jessica Simpson. I mean, I don't need to talk about Jessica Simpson's music, but I will speak about her in reference to the NFL and to her dog getting carried off by a coyote, which is terribly sad. But
one last thing on the NLCS before we move over to the American League. I don't know if you guys saw this today, but the walk-up ticket prices have been, massive in Philly since they started this postseason run. They're massive everywhere, except this is the first time I saw it where the number was really low. Diamondbacks ticket prices are cratering. This is how bad games 1 and 2 were, Samantha, in Philly, where the fans in Phoenix are basically saying, I'm not paying more than $15 to go see this game. That's obviously not good for baseball, but what are your thoughts on this?
so to clarify, he means resale tickets.
Yes. Excuse me. Resale tickets. Yes.
So just to clarify that. I'm am I surprised by this? Kind of. I don't know. I'm probably like the wrong person to weigh in on this because to me it's like I don't know if there's a playoff baseball game and it's my team playing or it's near where I am. I'm gonna go to it.
Right.
Like where the series is at doesn't really matter. But I also understand that these games are attended by a lot of people who do not share our like deep and undying love of baseball. So I guess it's all the people who signed up for the ticket lottery during the last round and went like, oh, this is fun. And now it doesn't look as fun anymore. So, yeah, I could see how the secondary market would have cooled off a bit in Arizona. I mean, it's weird to me, but like, I mean, I don't know. See, I'm advertising myself as the dummy. Like, don't give me a discount. I'd pay the full price. but yeah, I could see how that would happen when you consider that the audience is not made up of like 100% diehard Diamondbacks fans.
God, yeah, that's just how bad that series, the first 2 games were in Philly. I kind of feel bad for Diamondbacks fans, Irby. I really do.
The ones that don't are Rays fans. They're like, $15 still, man. This got to come down a little bit more here if I'm going to go to the game. Like, let me get this down to single digits. We see this a lot with resale when things like this happen, especially, I mean, you'll see it happen again if Philly wins game 3. Game 4 will be basically, we'll pay you to come type thing. But it goes right. I mean, that's the resale. Like, it's waves. It goes ebbs and flows and things like that. But yeah, that is a shockingly low number for 2023 postseason numbers. But hopefully that means enough people in Arizona will show up and rally their team because the Diamondbacks are fun to watch. I would love to see that series go at least deep enough to give Gallion and Kelly another shot at it. Mm-hmm. Hey, yeah, let's hope whatever it takes, let's rally them up.
Yeah. All right, let's flip it over to the American League Championship Series. Samantha, the Rangers go in, they grab the first 2 in Houston. I didn't actually know this before the postseason, before this series, but the Astros had a losing record in their home park this year, 40-43. And 20-plus games over 500 on the road now. Rangers fans know all too well what happens when the Astros are in town in Arlington. They love playing in that ballpark. So the Rangers get the first 2, and as we're recording this, the Astros are up in Game 3. So what is your sense on where this series is? Because as I mentioned with the NLCS, that 2-0 feels differently than this one does. Right, like the Rangers went in, they took care of business. They only needed to get 1, they got 2 in Houston. Factoring in the way the Astros play on the road, that second win was really much more important than it normally is in a playoff series, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. I was going to mention this as sort of a point of contrast when we were talking about the other series, and I decided to hold it for now. So you've led me to this nicely. Yeah, it's very strange because I think that if anything, what your first instinct would be to say that Texas's accomplishment was way bigger and more meaningful because they did it on the road. That's your automatic,
Right.
like no thought thing. But as you pointed out, that's not quite how this has worked. And I don't put a lot of stock into like anybody's like home record during the regular season compared to how they play in the playoffs. But I do pay attention to the fact that what it's looked like in the head-to-heads. You have said they love coming to Arlington. I was like, well, don't love that part at all. So yeah, I mean, I think that even though I don't know that the Rangers' 2 wins are any less valuable than the Phillies. In fact, I think they're more valuable. I agree with you. I think that as much as we were saying, hey, you got to get the split there, getting the 2 feels more important and perhaps even necessary here. But it's like, I think it's just because of the way, we just talked about how the Diamondbacks look flat. Like, the Astros are never going to do that for you. I mean, it's like, I've said it before, this is the one nice thing I'll say about the Astros. They don't quit.
Right.
They do not quit.
They don't.
They're not going to go away. Like that demoralized, beaten, no energy Diamondbacks team, you will never see that out of the Astros. They're going to fight till the last out. So we all knew they weren't getting swept out of here, right? We all knew this.
Sure.
But the question is, I think, do you come back and, like you said, really important to get those first 2. Maybe it's to your benefit that the last 2 will be played there as well. But I think I speak for us all when, as much as we say we don't want baseball to end, we want more games. I don't want to see this series go 7. I don't need that kind of stress. I don't want to give the trash cans that kind of opportunity. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if the Rangers could come back and rally tonight on Wednesday and get this one and then get the next one and get the sweep and get the hell out of there, that would be ideal to me. I don't need to see more baseball if it involves the trash cans.
Irby, same question to you. What's your sense here so far? ALCS.
I love that. Yeah, we'll sacrifice watching my team. I don't have to watch a game Friday. We can end this on Thursday. It's okay. It's okay, guys. We'll my son's got football practice, so it's okay. We can do that. Yeah. It's I'm with you guys too. What's interesting about Houston and how it all set up and what they did, because it's game 3 on the mound was Christian Javier, and you can make the argument that he really has been their best starter.
Right. Yeah.
And the guy, I mean, that has been the guy to get the job done for them. So, I mean, I get what Dusty Baker was doing there is if he can get the split at home and then have his best on the mound going against a Max Scherzer who is just coming back from a month off. Yeah, that has set yourself up great to get 2-1. You get right back and you take the split away, but it didn't happen. And Texas did what they had to do, getting 2. And we a whole lot left in this series and how this plays out. But it definitely does feel like, yeah, those 2 will mean a whole lot more as this goes forward. Getting those first 2 because Houston, with the point Samantha made about the Astros, this is a team that will get if you don't KO them, they will come back. And down 2-0 is not ideal. Any team would say that. This is not ideal. But this is a Houston team. This is an offense. This is they bullpen what you've seen them do. You saw what they were able to do in game 2 where they slowly came back.
Right.
They can. This team can win 4 straight. You give them breathing room, and we have unfortunately all been subject to this the last 6 years. You give them breathing room, they will come back. For all the hate and all the negative and all the cheating and all that stuff, these guys, and this is all assuming that they're clean right now, these guys don't give up. And Samantha, you said that great. They will not give up. And if you don't put them away, they will come back on you. So Texas, if it doesn't get done in game 3, you got to come out swinging in game 4. And, again, back to what we were saying at the beginning, this is the beauty of it, and postseasons even more of, you can win the first 2, and that's great, but you have to finish it. Yeah. Because nobody remembers the team that, but we were up 2-0. Well, but nobody cares if you don't get all 4.
No, that's not true. People remember that team. They just don't remember them the way that team would like for them to be remembered.
Oh, you're talking about the Mavericks when the mayor of Dallas,
yes,
of 2-0 in the Miami Heat, came exactly out and said, here's our championship parade route. Are you freaking kidding me? It's
Yeah.
2-0, and you're announcing the parade route. Miami then goes on to win 4 straight. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura Miller.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think you bring up a good point there about how Javier has been their best playoff starter, not just this year, but in the postseasons past. He's given up 2 hits in 3 postseason starts. Let that sink in for a second. 16 and a third coming into this game, 2 hits. So yeah, he's been Andy Pettit on that on the postseason mound. So and Scherzer coming in. Yeah, you can see this as the game where the Rangers were probably going to have some difficulties overcoming it, which game is still very much within range, but 2-1. Okay. Sure. No team has won the league championship series when they lose the first 2 at home. There's something to that stat, Samantha. That's been bugging me. I don't know if that is a stat that you could really just put a lot of weight on, especially when you factor in how good this Astros team is on the road. Like that stat kind of feels like it doesn't matter here.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of those things where, like, if the Rangers go on to win this, then it just becomes confirmation bias. It just remains true. But, like, I think that when you get a team that plays really well on the road, especially when you're talking about, we've had the LCS for a long time, but, like, it's not a long time compared to, like, the history of baseball. So I would throw that out there as well, that, anytime you're kind of plucking a number out and saying this has always been true through 2 games in this thing that's been going on for 30 odd years or whatever it is, 40 years, then it's not really a complete data set, because so much of it is driven by the matchup and how the visiting team performs on the road. So I think your point is correct, I guess, that I don't know if it applies to this team. I mean, I would be very, very skeptical of a stat like that and applying it to any team unless they were a team that had also played horrendously on the road. And also, I would, I guess, add to that, like, well, if you were the team that lost 2 on the road to open the series, you were the higher seed in every instance. So what does that mean? I would like to know how many of those teams were like the craptastic, like, Central Division winner that got beat by a wild card that we all knew was a better team. Right. That's the other thing that I think might be going on here. So here we're talking about 2 much more formidable opponents, so that's a bit tougher too. So I guess I'm pretty skeptical of that stat in general, but I think that your point about it not applying to the Astros is very important, because I think all we're trying to say here is, like, again, we're coming back to the whole, like, look, these guys, like, we hate these guys. I have nothing nice to say about them. I'm not completely convinced they're not cheating, like, all the time, and they're jerks, and their fans are jerks. But, like, they're not going to quit. So any stat that sort of, I guess, implies, whether it's valid in other instances or not, that, like, somebody's cooked after X number of games, X number of innings, whatever. I don't know that you ever apply that to a team that just fights and fights and fights until they're literally out of outs.
Yeah. Irby, I know you love stats. It's quite literally your Twitter handle, X handle, whatever we're calling that these days. I know you got some thoughts here. What do you think?
I 100% with Samantha. There's not enough data. It's simply not enough. And another one that you can factor in is what doesn't get brought into that is that you don't know what happened in the DS series before, because it could be a situation in which the home team had a little bit tougher of a DS series and their pitching lineup is offset.
Right.
And you don't have your aces, and you might have to be going not necessarily a bullpen game in game one, but a young pitcher, a rookie pitcher, somebody you don't need in that situation. Whereas then once you get on the road, you've got once you get to game 3, you got your studs going and you get the job done. So just too much of that I mean, sure, it's a good number, but talk to me in 50 years.
Yeah.
And see if the number is still holding. So but also all those years, like, I mean, we could sit here for hours and break it all down and go, well, yeah, that team, yeah, that one. I mean, there will be plenty of them where, like, that makes sense. That one's surprising. That one makes sense. That one makes sense. this is not one of those teams. All the hate in the world that we have for Houston, these guys you don't put them away, they're going to keep fighting. Yeah. And then they're going to fight until that 27th, who knows, maybe even after. I don't know. But, yeah, you got to put them away. And down 2-0, going into a ballpark that they have been successful in the last few years, they're not shaking right now. They're not panicking. And that's good baseball. That's what good baseball teams do. And it's one that it's interesting how the two series play out, because we're asking the question in the NL, like, what are you going to do? I know Arizona's at home, but it's like, here you go. You've been punched. You've been knocked down to the canvas twice. What are you going to do? How are you going to come back? Whereas it's a Houston team, it's not a matter of how. We know it was coming. Like, regardless of how this plays out, we all know Houston has in them that double-digit scoring game. They all have that game. That they have that offense where they're going to put a ton of runs on the board. I mean, a sweep, sure, would be amazing, but it's not one of those that's like, yeah, totally, we can do that. Like, no, this is a very powerful team, and it's a reason they've been there so many times. They get it done, and they know how to get it done.
Yeah, they've also been down 0-2 and come back. Now, the last time they lost the first two at home.
Also true.
The last time they lost the first two at home was the 2019 World Series, and that was the weird series where the road team won every game. I don't think we're going to have that here. You know, Samantha, I was just looking kind of down the road, like moving these chess pieces around. Obviously, if the Astros finish off this win in Game 3, they're not going to bring Verlander back on short rest for Game 4. He'll pitch Game 5, which lines up probably better for the Rangers, because the Rangers are, at this point, I really don't know who's going to start Game 4. That hasn't been announced. It could be Heaney, who's done well, but he's not matched up against Verlander. He's matched up against, I guess, Uquity. Right? So the point is, I think the important thing for the Rangers here is you got to get one win that's not Montgomery and Eovaldi on the mound. Right? Now, technically speaking, of course, as long as Montgomery and Eovaldi both win their starts in the ALCS, that's the 4 wins you need, and you go on to the World Series. But it takes the pressure off both of them if you get that other W outside of them, outside of those two. You get that W, right? Because then you only need to win one between Montgomery and Eovaldi. So that for me, that's the secret sauce for the Rangers. That's what they've got to get done. Game 4 now becomes the linchpin, because obviously if there's a comeback here and the Rangers take Game 3, then Game 4 could be the deciding game. But if the Rangers can come back and get that one after a loss in Game 3, well, then it's 3-1. You got Eovaldi and Montgomery going the next couple of days.
Yeah, no, okay, so I was going to ask you this question. So, and I think you just answered it for me, because I was like, okay, so what do you do, right? Because you don't want to get into a situation where you were up 2-0 and now you're tied 2-2. So starting Max was a risk. It wasn't a good risk. In Bochy's defense, I'm not sure he could have known that. So, right. Okay, it happened. Maybe you come back in this one. Hopefully you come back in this one. If you don't, you're fine if you come back and win that third one. You know, like you go up 3-1, and like you said, then you're back to, you got 2 shots at it. You got Montgomery, you got Eovaldi, you got 2 cracks at it. You're probably going to get one of them. But if you land yourself in a spot where you're 2-2, that's where I think you're really in trouble, because then all of a sudden, then you have to win both of those. And, you know, I don't know what Houston would do with their rotation, if they would shuffle up a bit at that point. You do have a travel day in there to play with, so that's something to consider. So, okay, how much do you trust Heaney? Like, you trust, I mean, to me, Heaney versus Katie, if that's what the matchup ends up being, is kind of a crapshoot. So maybe you come out on the right end of that one. Then, you know, if you end up dropping Game 3, then you're up 3-1 after 4. You're in good shape, because you have 2 pitchers who've been outstanding, and you only need 1 win. If you don't do that, and you're in a tie series, then I think you have a different problem. Like, yeah, you're still going to get those 2 cracks at it, but, you know, you're potentially seeing a momentum shift where you have to get both of them, because, I mean, oh my gosh, what are you going to do if it goes 7? You're not sending Max out there again. Right. Not after what we've seen. Do you want to see Andrew Heaney pitch Game 7? That is a terrifying. sorry, Andrew Heaney, but like that is terrifying.
Yeah, the only caveat I would put on that is, especially in Arlington, Heaney has been good against Houston.
But that wouldn't. Okay, that helps you in the first one, but that doesn't help you if you end up losing 3-2 and you end up pitching Game 7 in Houston.
I mean, one could argue, right? One could argue that not really being in Game 3 helps the Rangers for Game 4. Because now you're going to get guys that haven't pitched in a week and a half in here. Because the Rangers, the way these postseason games have gone, they've used essentially the same 7 pitchers this whole time. So you've got guys.
Oh, well, we saw it in Philly last night too.
Yeah.
The bullpen also came out to play, and you're like, okay, let's get everybody loose. So no, that is a valid argument.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's valid.
And in terms of Game 4, I mean, Irby, I would assume it would be a piggyback of Heaney and Dunning in Game 4. I would assume that based off of what they've done this postseason so far. And
not just the postseason, but the regular season too. Through September, when Texas was dying for pitchers, we saw multiple outings there of Heaney, Dunning, boom, boom. So yes, I think that's exactly what you will see tomorrow's game, regardless of how today plays out. And that's where you're hopeful now. Now you're getting in situation. I go back to Samantha. Yeah, you gave me a nice little heart attack. So thank you guys for not coming to me quick. Was yes when you're saying Andrew Heaney Game 7, and I hear you, Bo. I know he's been great, but my gosh, if you'd have told me that, like the emotions I would have had like 3 months ago is like, you'll be in Game 7 of the ALCS. Like, oh, really? Awesome. Good year. Andrew Heaney will start. What?
Hey.
What the hell goes wrong?
Say what you will. Okay, say what you will about Heaney. I'm actually going to defend him for a second. The big games
he shows up.
He has shown.
I know. I know.
He got the one win in Seattle that clinched him that playoff spot. He was the reason they didn't get swept. He goes out there, he pitches well in Game 1 of the ALDS when they were really trying to just get it back to Montgomery and Eovaldi. Like, you got to give him some credit at some point.
I am, and I trust him to get the job done, but it still scares the living crap out of me.
Well, still, I mean, like no one ever even considered this being a sweep, right, Samantha? Like no one actually thought the Rangers were just going to win all 4 games. So, and this will be if they don't come back on this, and this is their first playoff loss, it's going to be interesting to see how they react to that, because they haven't had a loss in 2 weeks.
I would have loved dearly to see the Rangers sweep this series in particular. But yeah, I mean, I think realistically speaking, no matter what we think about who is going to win this or what the situation is right now, I don't think any of us believe this was going to be a sweep. So yeah, I mean, there's an interesting. I mean, I personally would prefer that they rallied as we're recording on Wednesday night and won this game and went up 3-0. I would prefer that would be better for us and better for baseball and better for America. But if they don't, yeah, I mean, then it puts you in an interesting situation, right? Where, like, a 2-1 lead is not much. So I need to see how the Rangers respond to that. Do they come out like, okay, wow, this is much too close? Like, how willful is it? Can they just say, okay, you got your one, let's just take care of this? Are they able to do that? Or is this going to be more complicated than that? But I would love to see them come out and look super aggressive in the game after that, if they do end up going on to lose the game that we're seeing while we're recording. Sorry, it's hard to talk about this while it's happening and give both possible outcomes.
It really is.
So,
it really is.
I'm sorry, you guys, it's rough, but it's like
really
it's late, for us. We're old and we have spouses and children and stuff. So I can't tell you at 1 o'clock in the morning like I used to, and neither can these guys. So we got to roll when we have to roll. So it's a bit difficult to say. So we're kind of trying to give it to you both ways, I guess.
Yeah. Well, again, Game 4 is going to be. I think it's going to be the big one, Irby. It's going to be Game 4, regardless of what happens the rest of this game today. Game 4 is going to be quite massive because there's obviously a big difference between 2-2 and 3-1. Let's start there. But getting that, I'm going to say it again, getting that W outside of Eovaldi and Montgomery, I think, is the secret sauce to how the Rangers finish off the Astros in the ALCS. They've got to get one win outside of those two.
Well, and you guys are absolutely right. Yes, I mean, sure. If Montgomery and Uvalde are going to do what they did again, and the offense shows up, awesome, great. That equals 4, and that's all you need is 4. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to equal 4. If you can get up 3-1 with those two going, yes, it looks a whole lot better in that situation. Where, I if anything, like you've got at minimum got to get one of these at home and be up 3-2 going to Houston and forcing the Astros to win 2 at home. With that said, to be even a little more specific of what you guys are talking about, of how Texas responds and everything, I would love to see and this is why you go out and you get managers like Bochy, and I would put Dusty Baker in there as well, as these long-time mainstay guys that Bochy is fairly like the it's not a lack of emotion, it's just a consistency of emotion. Okay? You saw game 2 where Texas came out, slugging, gets 4. You get one back, and they immediately take it back, and it's 5-1. And we were just sitting there 5-1. And what did the Astros do? They pecked away. Sure, it was solo home runs, and that's not the ideal way to come back. And it ends up, because it was just solos, you end up losing. But they pecked away, and they made it interesting. You got yourself feeling good. As, like you said, the difficulty of what we're doing and everything, it's 5-0. Houston. So what is Texas going to do? Forget game 4 right now. What are you going to do the rest of this game? And we don't know. We'll find out as it plays out. But you've got to respond now. You've got to start building that confidence for game 4 right now.
Yeah.
Respond because you're sitting in a situation right now where they're running the table on you lately since you were up 5-1. You haven't done much. Since that first inning of game 2 in Houston, you haven't really done anything. So it is little by little. It's picking away. It's putting the ball in play. It's stop hitting fly balls trying to hit home runs. It's doing what you did to get yourself here. This team scored more double-digit runs than anybody. This team had more crooked innings than anybody. Okay? It's sweet, sounds amazing. It wasn't going to happen.
No.
Okay? It wasn't going to happen. Sure, sounds great. You can do it. It's awesome, but it wasn't going to happen. So what do you do? And that's where a Bochy makes a huge deal, because if game 3 doesn't go the way they wanted, you know what Bochy's going to do tonight? The same thing he did last night. You know what Bochy's going to do tomorrow morning, get ready for the game? Same thing he did this morning. That's why you get managers like that. And he's not the only one. There is a handful of great managers out there through the history, but definitely even today, where that's what you do. It's that mainstay of, yep, yesterday wasn't our day. Let's go get it today.
Yep. That's it. Smith, anything you want to add here to the ALCS before we call it a week?
No, I don't think so. Go Rangers. I'll be that guy. I'll be that guy.
I mean, I don't think there's any question where Irby and I stand on that.
Yeah, I mean, we had a Phillies Rangers World Series. We're gonna start having some problems, but for now, we're all on the same team.
Oh boy! All right, Irby, how about you? Anything else you want to add?
Yes, we will have problems with that, and I believe that this podcast, this friendship, this can survive that. So let's just do that. Let's just do that. Let's do that Phillies Rangers World Series, and let's just put this friendship to that test. It'll make us all stronger. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
I agree. Love to have that problem, right? I feel like we could solve that problem amicably. So, let's create that problem.
Yeah.
I'm in favor. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well put. Well put.
Yeah, I like it. That's a problem I'm very much in favor of creating. All right. That's going to do it for us, though. Wherever you listen to your podcast, don't forget to give us that like, give us a subscription, help us out with that algorithm so we can get some more lollygaggers in here. Until next week, watch some baseball. It's good for you.